quality of the biological drug. And we do this in a very easy way. What we do is when you produce vaccines, it's called a batch. It's like 5 liters of vaccine. You take out a tiny sample.
Similar to AI, you have a batch in AI as well.
Exactly. Yeah. We're coming to the AI in it.
Yeah.
So basically, you take out a small sample from the batch. Then we use a very advanced form of microscopy. It's called electron microscopy. So we magnify up to 100,000 times, and we see the tiny particles. And here we come to the magic. Then what we have developed is an image analysis software. So basically, we extract information from thousands of images, and we find particles, we count them, we measure their size, we look if there's aggregation, broken particles, and one of the main things to look at are the particles empty or full. In this case, they need to be full with a piece of genetic material that we're going to insert into the patient and create immune response.
And how can you see that? Can you see that from the image itself, that it's actually empty or full? Or
yeah, so if you take out a tiny sample, that's thousands of virus particles. So when you magnify and look at it, it's like Google Maps looking at Sweden and looking for a cat, for example. And then we can find there are many cats in Sweden, like 10,000, 100,000. And it's the same with virus particles. It's full of virus particles. So my work as a researcher was actually to count them manually. That was called a PhD.
So you had these super huge images and you zoomed in on them and counted the number of particles. And
yeah, exactly. So the problem with having the data in the form of images is that they're open to interpretation. It's more like religion.
Subjective
or very. So what the computer science or image analysis software provides is the objectivity, the specificity, and above all, the possibility to count thousands and thousands of particles, extracting the information, and then you can have the statistics and compile it into a report. I'm simplifying it now, as you know.
And if we talk about the whole pandemic, and could you tell us a little bit behind the scenes story? What happens? How does it work? When do you get into the process, or how did that all go about?
Yeah. So it's actually fascinating how fast we managed to develop vaccines against a new virus. So I wouldn't say there are any new viruses, because viruses, they're around. But the problem is with the jump from an animal source to humans. So this is the case with the COVID. Before it was swine flu, bird flu. We had MERS from camels to humans in Saudi Arabia. And then now SARS from bats.
I think that's what you just said is interesting and news for me at least. So there isn't really new viruses being developed that often. It's usually just jumping from species and then...
Yeah, they are around.
Yeah.
But there are some viruses that are clever, that have been around for a long time. For example, I started with herpes viruses. Yeah. Fascinating creatures.
People love it. So.
Yeah, you kiss and hug and they spread. But above all, they don't cause severe disease and death among us. They live with us like a symbiosis. So that's a clever virus. So a virus, basically, the meaning of life for a virus is to reproduce. Right. Basically like humans and animals.
What's the difference?
Exactly. But what they do, they infect us, and then they use our cells as factories to produce more virus. That's basically what they do. But if they do that and they coexist with us, then we don't get sick. We don't die. We don't even develop disease. So for herpes, for example, you just get blisters when it's sunny or you're stressed. Or I shouldn't talk too much about herpes because then I get a lot of questions. But basically, so that's a clever virus. Then there are stupid viruses that kill us, like Ebola. If you get Ebola and your nose start to bleed, it's virus production. If you get a common cold in your ear or your nose or your throat, that's virus production taking place, causing a symptom.
And if we go into COVID now, can we elaborate a little bit? So this is coming from the animal kingdom, but could you sort of educate us a little bit about what is this virus all about?
Yeah. So there are some revolutions going on in science, not only artificial intelligence. For example, gene editing. So when a new virus pops up, we can sequence it very fast. It's in a matter of days, they sequence the genome of the virus.
Is that by using like the CRISPR editing tool, or?
Exactly, CRISPR editing, and also just sequencing. There are many ways of sequencing things, many machines, and you can...
So in this particular, when we got COVID, how many days until we had actually a sequence on it?
I think it's just a week, 7 or 8,
crazy,
10 days, because you need to make sure that it's the right strain, and you need a human strain from a few patients to be sure. And with that, if you have a genome sequence, and another revolution is then it's called gene therapy, to insert a gene into a patient that lacks that patient and cure disease. And if we look at Nobel Prizes as a good credibility that a new technology is good, so we had 2017 for electron microscopy, the technique we work with. Right. 2018, curing cancer with gene therapy, like lung cancer, skin cancer. Amazing things. So with the sequence, we manufactured sequences of the genome. It's called RNA. So basically, usually it's DNA, but RNA is even better.
Before you go to RNA and DNA, the sequence, there are many different sequences, right?
Yeah.
You have the DNA sequence, and you have amino acid sequences, and etc.
Yeah.
What type of sequences are we talking about right now?
So DNA, that's the first.
Yeah.
Deoxyribonuclease. So you can dominate in discussions after this.
I will never remember that anyway.
And from DNA, that's the code. And when you read it, you put together a chain of amino acids. Then you're creating a protein. And a protein is a building block of something. But DNA turns into RNA before you put together the amino acids.
You lost me at the RNA.
Okay, good. Okay.
What's the jump from DNA to RNA? What is that all about?
Yeah, so DNA is the template to make RNA. And from RNA is the template to make the amino acid chain. And an amino acid chain, a polymer of amino acids, that's a protein. And a protein can be small or big. But a protein is usually a building block.
Okay. In the body or in anything?
In the body, exactly, yeah. So a unit of life.
So how do I really understand the difference between DNA and RNA? Template of a template, you explained it, but...
Yeah, it's like if you have... so DNA is just 4 letters, A, T, C, G. And if you put 4 together, it's called a codon. And that's a template for one amino acid. Okay, and then you can... Build on that. Yeah. So if you find a new virus, you sequence it, then you can, try to make one of the proteins from that virus. And usually choose...
You just said, we just sequence it. I mean...
Yeah, it sounds so simple, isn't it?
But you can't really, I guess you can't really extract the full sequence in advance. You have to sequence some samples of it in some way and then put it together, right?
Yeah, exactly. You take out a sample from a patient, you isolate it, you purify it. This is... people in white coats doing magic. They get it out, they have a magic machine, they put it in, they get out a sequence on the computer, still magic.
So there's still a process here.
Yeah. This is high tech, very high tech, extremely high tech. But this also, it's like if you compare with computer science, if you see the computer power today or how much data we can store or how quickly we can do calculations today, it's the same with sequencing. We sequence the whole human genome around 2000, and now 2020, we can sequence any person's sequence. They did it the first time I took it, probably took a year or 2 or 3. Now you can sequence the whole human genome.
And why does it go so much faster now? Is it because you have faster computing power, or is it because you have better algorithms to actually do the sequencing, or what is the reason behind the speed up?
And hardware, how to do the sequencing itself.
And also science behind.
Yeah.
Of course, the CRISPR revolution.
Yeah, the CRISPR, yeah.
So a little bit back to the story now. So we went down a rabbit hole now, but I think it's good to sort of set a little bit of...
You're digging deep here.
Yeah, this is education. We love
Genetics.
it. But if we relate back to the sort of COVID story, chronological story, what happened, the sequence, they had it sequenced in a week.
Yeah.
And what happens next to the path to a vaccine?
So the good things here with the pandemic is that everybody knows a little bit about viruses, vaccines, and how it goes.
But not on this level.
No,
not on this level.
But let's try to simplify it. So you sequence it, then you know the book, the instruction manual, how to build that virus. Okay, then we're going to pick something that the human body, the immune system can recognize. So usually they pick what's around the virus. The virus is a circle thing, like a soccer ball. Then it usually have some things on its surface. So you pick one of the surface proteins. And in the case of coronavirus, COVID is easy, it's just one. So you pick that protein and the sequence for it. You produce mRNA. You put it into an empty virus capsid that you produce. We can manufacture virus particles now. Then you put the mRNA into that virus particle, and that's what you inject.
And now we use the word mRNA.
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 Yeah. Let's call it just genetic material. It's easier.
Okay.
So there are 2 types of genetic material. So if you have a cell, you have a core. That's where you have DNA. When the DNA is translated into proteins, it goes out to inside the cell, outside the nucleus. Then it becomes a protein. And then it can go out of the cell or sit on the surface.
So when you were talking about mRNA, we are on the next the nucleus is the DNA and RNA and all that kind of stuff. And then when we put that into the meta,
yes,
I don't know what's the right word.
Let's say there are two types of viruses: RNA viruses and DNA viruses. DNA viruses are more advanced. RNA viruses are simpler. An RNA virus don't need to go into the nucleus of the cell. They just go through a cell membrane. They put in some RNA. And the cell starts to produce the building blocks. Yeah, so
you basically you fool the cell to take over and start reproduce the virus rather than doing what it should be doing.
When this ends, you're going to have a master in biology.
I need this.
I don't know if I'm accredited to give it, but
no. Could we get that on paper?
Yeah, please.
No, but I think we could illustrate this to make it educational.
Yeah.
If you go through this, which is actually
if you put it, so you. Went to this.
Show it. No. Here it is.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's good. I guess there are a lot of mathematicians listening to this. So this is a wonder of nature. Yeah. The geometrical form is called icosahedral.
Oh,
so it's pentamers and hexamers with the laws of nature forming this icosahedral with the lowest amount of energy possible. And the building blocks, that's the proteins. So the proteins form hexamers and pentamers, and they form the icosahedral. Is that enough mathematics for you?
No, you can go
How
down.
many surfaces does an icosahedral have?
Yeah, that's the question for the listeners. What do they win?
Yeah.
T-shirt.
Okay. If we have anyone on
how many surfaces on an icosahedral? How many pentamers? How many hexamers?
Yeah, those are easy, I think. But okay, but okay, let's not go there. Interesting.
So back to this. I mean,
okay. So, but just to show the picture, if this is just a capsid, it's called capsid. This is what you fill with a piece of genetic material, and it's called gene therapy. We master how to produce virus particles, and we can insert a piece of genome that someone lacks. You've heard about hereditary diseases. You lack a certain gene, so we can give that patient the gene they lack. And there are many companies like Spark. They managed to cure hereditary blindness, for example. It's like science fiction. You've probably seen it on YouTube. They get the shot and they take out and they start to see. Yeah. It's like magic, science fiction.
But you enter that into a single cell, or how can that spread out through the body?
So you manufacture thousands of particles like this. This is like producing vaccines that we were talking about. A vaccine is just you're manufacturing viruses, but you have made those viruses a little bit handicapped so that they don't cause disease or death. Okay, so basically you use this AAV.
So that's a virus particle.
That's a virus particle, and then you can fill it.
Very common one. This is the most common one. Adeno-associated virus.
Yeah, and this one is used it's called gene therapy.
Yeah,
and the revolution has really been in gene therapy. But when the pandemic started, we used the tools from gene therapy to make mRNA vaccines. Basically, using this virus particle, putting in a short piece of mRNA from the COVID that we had sequenced, and that was the mRNA vaccine. So you heard Moderna Therapeutics.
Sounds very simple.
It is.
But I guess no, I don't think it is.
This is essentially what Moderna did.
Yeah. I only studied 20 years to do this. So.
And were you working with several of the companies, or mainly one of the pharmaceutical companies in this, from your point of view?
So we have 15 of the 20 major pharmaceuticals as recurrent customers. We also work with a lot of SMEs that are very, very specialized and the world leaders in gene therapy. Very good companies coming straight out of top universities. They are niche players. Some have viral vectors. Some know how to manufacture them. Some are good at putting in the mRNA into them. And we have a history of working with something called drug delivery. Before putting in genes, we were using this similar technology to deliver drugs into patients. For example, if you have cancer comes in many forms, different cell types. Maybe you want to target just that specific cancer cell and kill it. That's
like
called drug delivery.
Melanoma, for instance.
Yeah. So then you just want to target those kind of cells, and that's called drug delivery. And then similar things is gene therapy.
So you could basically, so you have over the time then, you did something, you've been working on it there, and you could apply that technology and that approach to gene therapy.
Yeah, so this is not the first pandemic. So we worked a lot with influenza virus. That's our background. We have developed drugs against viruses. We worked with all the manufacturers developing influenza virus vaccines. And you remember there were some problems there.
Yeah,
quality issues.
And when you look back at this, or maybe think about this like in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time, when you look back at this as an event, how would you summarize what your key contribution was to sort of to get to the right vaccines and where we are today to sort of get back to normal?
Well, I cannot take all the credit for that. But I think what's really, really wonderful is it shows a lot about how the scientific discoveries of today or very recent one have been applied so fast. And I think the problem is not only the science, is the regulatory framework. In order to produce a drug, it usually takes like 10, 15 years and costs $1 to $2 billion. Now what we did with COVID, we developed a vaccine within 2 months, 6 weeks.
42 days.
Yeah.
Actually, Moderna.
Yeah. So 42 days, but then of course you have all the trials and all that kind of stuff. So
that's usually the big hurdle is the trials. Yeah. It's like clinical trials. You go through it's called preclinical, phase 1,
phase 2,
2, 3, and manufacturing is actually a big issue here.
Ramped up the production. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the bottleneck. To do there are too many hurdles, of course. First one is this has cost a lot of money. Yes. So these modern vaccines are really, really expensive, and we should be very proud about Astra Zeneca, who they are the ones who very early said we're going to do this non-profit. It's just very recently that they changed to charging, especially Europe, because they complain so much. But Sweden or AstraZeneca is really contributing to vaccinating the whole global population, not only the rich or Europe and US, but the global population through WHO. I think that's important too.
I guess, I'm asking too many questions now because you move into so interesting topics, but we should do a proper introduction
we
soon.
We need to do it soon, a proper introduction. A little bit more. This is so fun.
But this is all about biology. When are we coming to artificial intelligence?
But I think this is the key topic, right?
Yeah.
AI on its own is worth nothing. You need to have the fundamental first principles ideas. You have to have the business problem, the medical problem, and then understanding how they infuse. So for me now to go nuts on the real business problem, and then understanding how AI relates, I think it's core, and I think that's sort of missing the point if you're not deep on the fundamental problem you're trying to solve. So I love it.
So back to the question. To AstraZeneca's point, and they delivered created a vaccine in a bit different way than Moderna, etc. Yeah. Right? What was really the difference?
So they picked it up from a university in the UK. So that's usually where the discoveries and innovation come from. Universities, scientists, and then they start to commercialize it. Moderna, they picked it up from BioNTech, a German company. So, but you need that big machinery because it costs so much. You need a lot of resources to develop it, manufacture it, and get it out on the market, and actually vaccine. So the only problem here is the politics. So how to combat COVID? It was too much politics, too little medicine. That's the problem. If you look at China, how they just closed down the country. It doesn't really work here in Europe, but some countries applied it, not Sweden. So that's not medicine, that's something else. Yeah, you cannot really escape from a virus.
But they didn't do an mRNA vaccine, right? In AstraZeneca.
No, all of them are using the same. The nice picture here, the AAV virus particle, filling it with something and administering it. Then there are the traditional, like old school vaccines. So actually, vaccines, that was not a big business until this pandemic. It's actually India. India is the major producer of vaccines in the world. It's Serum Institute of India in Pune, owned by a very nice guy, very clever guy. And that's a high volume, low cost business model. I know you're the businessman here. It's a high volume, low cost. So we're vaccinating the whole world.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. Children used to die from childbirth and other things. Now we're vaccinating the whole world, but that's traditional vaccines. What we're talking about is these modern mRNA vaccines coming out of this new technology, the gene therapy, and that in 42 days they managed to not only develop it, but also manufacture it and deliver it. Yeah. That's fantastic.
On prototype stage, of course.
Yeah,
but,
it requires a lot of money, a lot of skills, and a lot of logistics to do this. And the thing we haven't touched upon is the regulatory framework. Right. And this is something from a company perspective as well. You know, patient safety is of course, basically it's the government's problem. And it's only the government who can decide about approving a vaccine for emergency use. Because this is what we have done.
Yes, to cut the red tape.
Exactly. I told you it take 10 to 15 years and cost 10 to 20 billion Swedish. Well, it still costed them 1 to 2 billion probably to develop it and get it out, but they did it in 42 days, and others now are still working on it. Then you have to, you know, the regulatory framework, the quality assurance, how effective they are. Well, we did some quick tests here. And basically our company, Vironova, what we work with is the quality control of these vaccines and products. And this is the hurdle when it comes to drug development today. It's very costly. It takes a lot of time. And this is because of the patient safety and the regulatory framework around it.
Would that be a good segue, perhaps, to
I think this is,
yeah,
I think this is the segue to. I mean, like this was the 2-minute introduction. You know, having a hook to get started in a cool way, and it's so fascinating. So 2 minutes, 5 minutes turned into 20 minutes. But let's really do the proper introduction. So today we have the CEO from Vironova, Mohammed, and we have Mats, old friend of mine, an old colleague of mine, and.
Let's friend of mine.
Yeah. And I think we should start there. You know, how the hell did you two guys meet, and what's the starting point for this journey? I guess we go down to five years old or something like that.
Should we go back?
Kindergarten.
Back? Yeah, then we go back to kindergarten. We are 3 or 4 years old. I actually do not know we were 3 or 4. That's where we started back in Fisksätra.
So two Fisksätra boys in kindergarten we have today as guests. That's where we start.
This is the Maradona of Fisksätra, the best soccer player ever. We have a few, second and third.
I think we have some bias there. We should talk about data and AI, but thank you for promoting. But we continued. Our road has been going together until we went to the secondary school. Then we took separate ways. Yeah. You went for medicine. I went for soccer.
Yeah, that's right.
Business.
Business
and
as
soccer.
well, and guitar and so forth. And then actually my road crossed your road before I came back to you.
Yeah. So me and Mats has worked together at Pro Sales.
Yeah.
And then you worked with me for some time in Vattenfall as well.
Yeah, exactly. We've been management consultants both.
Yeah, we've been consultants, and I've been your customer and stuff like this. Yeah, good fun. But maybe a little bit back to you, Mohammed. So so what's the starting point here, sort of, that takes you to Vironova? If we can do that now, maybe not in 20 minutes, but in 10 minutes. 10 minutes maybe.
So I'm actually a scientist, as I said before, disguised in a suit. So it goes back to I love science. I have a passion for viruses. I started in chemistry, Uppsala University. Then I went into biology. Still Uppsala University. And then I went to the Karolinska Institute here in Stockholm, and I did medical research for like 10 years, focusing on viruses. So I started with drug development, trying to combat virus infections, both with diagnostic tools, but basically it was to use my chemistry and biology combined to develop molecules as medicines against viruses. The strategy that I had was to disrupt the virus particle. Now we have talked about this icosahedral. Yes. We have this competition going on, how many sides. But so basically the strategy was to disrupt the virus particle, to break it down. That was the way to cure us from virus infections. And my research, the data I generated was in the form of images, because I was using electron microscopy to look at these virus particles, to actually look if I managed to disrupt them. Basically, you culture cells, you infect them with virus, then you add your compound, the pharmaceutical to be. And then what I did during my PhD was just taking pictures, and then I sat with these pens with different colors, red, green, and blue. I looked for empty particles, broken particles, and then I was counting them. Yep. And so it usually took me 1 week of taking pictures, another week of counting particles. And the third week I met the professor and the head physician, and then the problem was this objectivity and subjectivity.
Yeah.
But here we have high stakes, high quality, really intelligent people doing very, very tedious data work.
Yes. Because it's complicated. At this time, when I was using the electron microscope, as a very academic tool in the basement of the university, these are things that cost from 10 million to 30, 40 million crowns. It's like flying a big plane, a lot of different things that you adjust to calibrate it, to get a good picture.
So even to work...
that was a hard thing, to calibrate it, to find the virus, to prepare your samples to put into the machine. And then I went into the dark room with the red lights, developing my images. But at the same time as I was working on these things, using these analog machines, we started the digital, I shouldn't say revolution, but first came digital cameras.
What year are we speaking about approximately?
From
right
2000.
Now? 2000
on.
Yeah.
So we had the digital cameras. The first ones costed like $100,000, like 1 million crowns or 2 million crowns. Now we are producing one for 17,500. I shouldn't have said that because that's not what we sell them for. But I mean, the price difference is huge, and how much better they are today than before is also huge. We also started what the goal of our company has been to automate and digitalize the electron microscope itself, to make digital cameras, and we do 2 types of software. I'm not Bill Gates, but we try to illustrate this with, we have an operative system that runs the hardware, automation, make it user-friendly, auto-calibration, etc. And then we have the office package where you handle the data. You generate images, you have to store them, you have to analyze them, extract information from them, and compile that into reports with the statistics. And that's the customer value for us. There are a lot of companies, 3, that make microscopes, but we're the only one who really works with the data. What's actually the information in the images that are creating value.
So you had, besides the hardware, also the software to be able to work with the cameras?
But let's hold on that, because
from a very egoistic perspective, it was tedious to count particles.
But we get into the Vironova stuff. But so you were doing your PhD, but you're a dropout that went patent instead.
I blame it on Bill Clinton because I filed a patent, I won a prize, I met Bill Clinton and Americans, and they just asked me, so how much does it cost for me to do the analysis with your software? I was like, what? You're going to pay me for it? I was paid 7,000 crowns a month.
but go back a step here, because you figured something out, and what did you patent?
Okay, so the first patents was actually a drug. The first drug against the virus was herpes. So we developed a drug that did what I just told you, disrupt the virus particle. And that was a good thing, because the icosahedra, back to the symmetry of these capsids, it's mathematics, they all look the same. There are 8 different herpes viruses, but the capsid look almost the same. So if you develop one drug against one of these herpes viruses, we found out that it had effect against the other ones. Not a great effect, I can admit, but an effect. And this was really, really interesting. Because the problem with viruses is once you develop a drug against a virus, they change so much. They change on the surface, like influenza, and they change in the genome, like HIV, mutations. You've heard about that. But the icosahedra is a conserved structure. It's the wonders of nature. These lowest energy with the building
stable
blocks.
Structure.
Exactly, very, very stable. So if you can bind something between the pentamers and hexamers to destabilize the particle, a fantastic way to develop drugs against viruses. But
this is what your patent was.
Exactly. That was the first antiviral against herpes, and then we continued, and we have done the same against influenza virus. Influenza virus is also common knowledge now.
And you were staying at Karolinska. I mean, like you dropped out maybe of your PhD, but you were staying at Karolinska.
Because the funny thing with research is very similar to business. You apply for grants, and that funds your research. So it's basically you take money and you create knowledge. Now we're on the other side. Now we take knowledge and we're creating money out of it. But it's very much the same, you know.
I like that summary, actually.
Yeah. So we were very good at getting grants. And actually, when I started the company, but I was still at the university.
So Vironova is started out of
Karolinska. Yeah. So my professor in chemistry that I work with, he's still working with us. He turned 80 last year.
Jan Bergman, we should mention
Jan Bergman.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jan Bergman.
Yeah, he's fantastic. That's one of the most clever people in the world. Definitely, for sure. And I met a lot of clever people. He's outstanding. Yeah,
awesome.
Better than internet.
Better than Elon Musk.
Yeah, don't ask
No, for sure. He's got it's called the Chemistry Bible, which is like German books from 1850 something, up until today. But he's still better than these books. And he thinks like internet is a new phenomena. The real knowledge is in these books.
Interesting.
So what was the starting point and the idea then? Like when did you do sort of, we can make a company out of this, or this, or maybe even this? Let's go back to Bill Clinton, because someone wanted software. What happened?
Yeah, so the first patent was, as I said, it was an antiviral compound, but it was also I was collaborating with mathematicians and people working with image analysis. So I had a master thesis worker, Martin, doing his master thesis in mathematics with us. He's now a PhD in artificial intelligence, Department of Mathematics, Royal Institute of Technology. And Ida Maria, she was doing image analysis. She was a PhD student then. She's almost a professor now, assistant professor in image analysis. Yeah, KTH. And there were two patents, two separate ones actually. One was like image analysis tools to look at viruses, and Martin was also doing a similar thing. And I was using this to show the mechanism of action of my drug. So we're 3 people doing this. And and then I published this. No, I didn't publish it. I patented it.
Yeah,
and actually, my university paid for it. And I stayed. But when I went out to conferences to present this, then the American researchers, they were like, "Wow, Mohammed, this is good. Like, can we use it? Can you do this for me on my virus particles?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I thought, I'm going to become a professor, because if you do something for another researcher, they put your name on the article. So I was like, this is the way how to become a professor in virology. I'm going to sit and do this, and I'm going to become a professor in virology. But then they asked me, so how much is it? I was like, what? Yeah, but how much does it cost? Yeah, then I have Moroccan blood.
You go back to Fisksätra.
Yeah, I was like, what? This is interesting. You're actually saying that you're going to pay me for this? And I made that joke before, but you're not well paid in research. That's for sure. You work 12 hours per day, weekends, and so. But it's because of research. It's interesting what you do.
You're passionate about your topic.
Problem solving. Yeah, problem solving is still
the number one motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But if you can make money out of it, even better. Yeah. So that's why I went with the patents, and I was actually encouraged to commercialize my science, because at the time it was new. First, they forced universities or researchers to communicate with the outside world. That was the first thing. Tredje uppgiften. Yeah.
Right.
And then we have something in Sweden called lärarundantaget, which means if I'm the scientist doing an invention, I own it. And actually my department helped me. I'm really thankful for that. They paid
for
the
Americans
first patent.
that don't have that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But what the Americans have that we don't have, or we're now trying to do, that is the support system around commercializing science. So when I was a PhD student, we had the first courses in how to patent science, how to write a business plan, and that was nice that they encouraged it. So we were one of the first to patent it. I owned my own research. Yeah. I started the company.
And when was Vironova founded?
2005. Yeah. And once we started, the funding was actually grants. So we started with Almi, a loan. I am also thankful to SE-banken. Yeah, thank you, SE-banken. They gave me a loan. I think that person is fired, because giving a loan of 300,000 to a researcher, that's probably, but I still like them. And then Vironova.
Vironova, of course.
They gave us 10 million to develop the software. We talked about this before.
That's quite substantial. I mean, it's that's interesting with Vironova also. We have talked about it before.
We had Vironova on the show as well.
Yeah, we have the Vironova, and we is it good to have many small loans, or do we need to have a little bit bigger ones, or bigger grants?
All of them are good.
Yeah, all of them are good.
Yeah, never say no to money. That's rule number one. And what's really good, if you're a researcher, you used to, write a grant. That's actually what I'm going to do this evening. I'm going to sit and review grant applications for a foundation. And if you cannot write a good application, you probably shouldn't do anything at all about it. Go back to the lab. No, but it's the same in business. You have to write a business plan, and it's sales. You have to convince someone else that you need this.
And the grant is the academic way of selling and pitching.
Yes, and this is, as I told you, the first thing that the government forced upon universities this tredje uppgiften, actually communicate what are you doing. And that's a challenge. But it's really, really interesting. That's what you're doing. You're contributing with your pod here about artificial intelligence and the different applications.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm very tempted to go to a side topic here about the academic system and how it works today.
Because I think we have reached sort of the storytelling up to Vironova, and but why don't we go to the academic system as a bridge?
Yeah,
and then
it's a short topic at least, because I think it's an important one. And I've been in the academic system as well after my PhD and continued to work. And I did what you said. Basically, you apply for a lot of grants and you try to find the right one to apply for, and you adopt the application to what the reviewers will, what you think the reviewers will like.
But it's like sales.
Yes, to some extent. But then if you compare it to, at least in AI today, and the academic system has failed in some ways. And the true research in AI today is occurring in the big tech companies. And they basically have caused a brain drain from all the academic and universities. They are paying high salaries for the top professors to come and work for them. And it's just continuing and accelerating in a fast pace. And I would also argue, and please stop me and disagree, but at least in computer science, the way that peer reviewing works today to publish article is diminishing and going down rabbit hole that is causing people to just push stuff in preprint kind of archive.org kind of sites.
To fast pace.
To just circumvent, for one, to fast pace, yes. But also that the whole reviewing system is not working that well. And there have this kind of, what do you call it? Like in when you have a set of people collaborating together to go around the normal reviewing system, if you have and know the right people in the network, you can get the paper accepted just because you know X number of people that is close to the reviewer. And it seems to be failing in what's supposed to be the good, purpose for peer reviewing articles and getting, publications out. And instead now the tech companies just, I'm just going to, if you take DeepMind or something, they push this kind of super big article on archive, like 50 pages long. They perhaps get something in Nature because they just who they are. But in reality, they demand, what should be published. And the universities are just, straggling behind more and more.
Yeah.
What do you at least for the AI and computer science part, that is partly, I would say, what's happening. What do you think about that?
Well, from a company perspective, because I employ a lot of people, the first problem I see is the shortage of the number of engineers or the computer scientists at all. So what that means is before they even finish school, where they're trying to employ them. So it must be very, very difficult to have enough students, taking their exam, and even more difficult to have them doing their PhDs.
Yes.
For example, one of our geniuses, Martin, he finished as an engineer, then he worked a lot, and then he went back.
Right.
And I guess that happens a lot with people from computer science, that they find out that it's not only about learning the latest program language, but there's a new language every year. But studying is all about learning a way to handle a lot of amount of data and then giving it back.
Accumulate knowledge.
But
you can do studying.
Learn to learn.
You can do studying in companies as well. And I would argue that is what's happening, at least with some tech companies today, and perhaps in your companies as well. So the alternative then turns out to be, should you do the studying, at the universities, or should you switch to a company quickly and get paid to get educated?
So maybe the answer is capitalism, because the giants who are recruiting all these people, if you look at the US and Sweden, for example, we have people working with us, and if they just go over there, they will have 10 times the salary.
Yeah.
But the reason they work with us is because it's the latest, the most complicated problem, and at the same time we're doing something good. So I think the motivation among computer scientists and mathematicians is very much working with very complex problems or something that they like doing, like combating virus infections, instead of selecting the cheapest shirt with e-commerce. but there are many types of...
Yeah, I think that motivation can at least circumvent some of the problems, but still it's not really... If this kind of divide starts to increase more and more, and you get paid so much more to join these kind of companies, would you agree that this is a problem that we need to try to fix somehow? Otherwise it will be concentrated into a very few set of companies?
Yeah, I think we have a problem in general that there are not enough people studying engineering. And I have two daughters myself, they're 14 and 16, and when they're selecting what to study, they have music and dancing and mathematics is not even, well, they had a few computer gaming kind of things, but that was all guys.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to show the applications of mathematics and software and AI to the children to make them curious that they want to do this, want to learn more, because natural science is quite boring the way it's taught today.
Right.
If you don't show the applications, and maybe have some role models or companies or products that you showcase. This is created by engineers.
But could you say that this is also this divide, that it's also geographically a difference? If we look,
I don't think Europe has.
East,
Europe don't have a single tech giant, I would argue.
Exactly. If we look to the east and look at India, where we get a lot of applications from, as soon
China.
as China and so forth.
Yeah.
There we have maybe not another mindset. We have a larger population, of course.
I mean, I think clearly, what I have understood, it's fashionable to do STEM type courses in some parts of the world, and it's completely unfashionable in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I am very much engaged as a person. Now, for example, I work with IVA in Swedish, Royal Academy of Sciences. And we have this huge problem about lack of competence to the Swedish industry. And if you look at the Swedish university today, we have very good universities. If you look at the world ranking.
We do, right?
Yeah.
So we actually are a
small country with very, very good universities.
Yes.
But if you look at who's studying in Sweden.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I did my PhD, we were 50% were non-Swedish. They came from all over the world to study at the Karolinska Institute. So basically, well, one thing, of course, the quality is high. Because of the Nobel Prize, for example, Swedish scientists in medicine, they can collaborate with the best scientists in the world because everybody wants to win the Nobel Prize. So that's a good thing. We should use that. We should be proud of that. And also the amount of money that is like private money going into research in Sweden is fantastic. It's just amazing how much money private donors are financing research with. And in Sweden, education is free. And when you do your PhD, you get paid.
Yes.
That's
unheard of.
Yeah, exactly. If you look internationally, like, what? Are you getting paid to do your PhD? If we should market that, we would be overcrowded. I think we should.
We should market it.
And this is exactly what we're doing, is we're hiring people who have come to Sweden to either take their master's degree or their PhD, and they already know who Pippi Långstrump is. We don't care about this if they speak Swedish. But, they are a little bit, assimilated, they know Sweden. And
I certainly agree. And that's one of the biggest kind of pros that we have in Sweden. We have great universities. We actually have good educational systems. And we get a lot of, really knowledgeable people that we can hire into companies. The problem is, can we keep them? Can we keep them when they, you have them in some companies and then they see, if I move to this country, work for that, company, I can get X number of more higher salary. And we can see this kind of brain drain coming, from Europe to other countries, I would argue. Would you agree with that?
No, I would say Sweden is one of the best countries at integrating people from other countries. I usually call it kebab pizza, for example. You have pizza and kebab, and in Sweden you have kebab pizza. That's a Swedish phenomenon. You take the best things from everywhere and you put it together. Like the universities, if you have 50% of the PhDs from other countries, but we should work more on keeping them.
Yes.
Yeah, they should stay in Sweden and work for these fantastic companies.
So the core. Let's zoom in on the problem here, and I think we get another topic now, and let's take it now rather than later because the storyline unfolds in this way.
Yeah.
So we are talking now about, in one way we are quite good at getting talent into the country to study.
Yeah,
That's what you said, right? I mean, in a way that
we're not doing it on purpose. They're coming because the universities are good.
But how well
Yeah.
are we then to use that fantastic muscle, or influx? Everybody who wants to run a soccer team, they know you have a problem if you don't have an influx of players, right? And here we have an influx of players at sort of the ripe age, where they are not Zlatan, the cheap Zlatans, the rising star Zlatans, if I'm a soccer guy. But what do we do in order to keep them? What are we doing in order to get them back into the country? Because we have a flip side of this coin, and it's how hard it is to get talent into our businesses.
Exactly.
Could we elaborate on this sort of? What's the story here?
The
What's the
future,
problem?
the competition of companies, you mentioned these big tech giants. What they're looking for is talent. That's the big competition. It's not money or so. There's plenty of money, but the talent, the people who are actually doing things. And if we get talents to Sweden and we attract them because of Sweden, the Swedish system, democracy, clean air, föräldraledighet, semester, all that, we should, do everything we can to make them stay.
Yes,
but
that's the problem. That's the problem I mentioned, right? I mean, you get people here,
but the administration is terrible. We have a company. Yeah. We have hired a company to help these people fill in the paperwork. Yeah. For example, we had a genius, a guy. He finished his PhD student in less than 4 years. That was the problem.
Oh, yeah,
because the book said it should take 4 years. And because he finished before 4 years, he was not allowed to stay in Sweden. Yeah. We had cake this week for Yingyi. After 6 years, she got her permanent residency. Yeah. And that's a genius young woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just terrible. The administration is not there.
But this is a huge problem for Sweden now, because in the one hand side, we are with our taxpayers' money, we're doing quite good marketing, or some way they come to our universities.
Yeah.
So we put the ball on the penalty. It's right there on the penalty. You kick the goal.
Yeah.
And then when the talent is here, and then we fuck up, in my opinion.
Have another beer, please.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to get into the.
We're talking about the system. It's hard to in the short run, in short term, do anything about the system.
But we have a Colombian guy and a Moroccan sitting here, and we speak Swedish fluently. We think we're Swedish.
You are?
Yeah. And that's the thing, the fascinating thing with Sweden. I said we're good at integration. Yeah.
Compared to a lot of...
What do you say?
Sure.
Yeah, you see?
Are we good at integration?
Just say yes.
Well, but what we can say is that some of the responsibility... go down. That's your word.
Don't you feel Swedish?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you see?
I mean, I watch So Mycket Bättre, Robinson, Sweden. I feel as incorporated in this country as everybody else.
Yeah,
I think. On the other side, I have been here for 16 years, so I have been paying them the tax.
Yeah, I'm born here. But I'm saying we're good at integration. It's just a new phenomenon with this brown collar in politics. That should be taken away.
No, but on the matter of this topic, I think that the Swedish system is actually a loophole. So I can name actually a number of people that I know that are super highly qualified to work. In Sweden, we are lacking around 77,000 IT professionals, but in the same time, people that are coming from United States and all different countries that are basically want to work here cannot get a residence permit or a working permit, because in order to work here, you need to get social security number. In order to get a social security number, you need to actually get a job. Yeah. And if the company is not basically strong enough to get you that social security number, you will be basically being in a limbo. Yeah. And after some time, what is happening is that people will basically move to another country that will provide that ease in order for them to work, because they are coming to Sweden, they like the culture, they like the people, they like everything, but they cannot actually get in. So you were talking about like we are extremely good in bringing students here. We're not, right? We used to be.
Can get more.
We used to be, right? All the glory days that I heard about, like when Ericsson was founded and Atlas Copco and SKF and Volvo and everything else. And that changed in 2009 because we changed the system how we, for people to come in. So only the people from, you can read it there. So it's basically, if you are a European and Switzerland citizen, the education is for free. What about those people that came from Pakistan and India that actually made Ericsson in the time?
We're employing... Yeah. Tons of them.
So if we want to be controversial, it's not good, right? I'm a little bit criticizing this because I think that we can do much. Look at what Vancouver had done in with the AI and everything else. We need, if we want to bring AI and the brain to Sweden, we need to change everything, not only how the company thinks. We need to change the politics, the migration. We have awful right now situation in finding actually accommodations.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can totally
it's
agree.
very-
Yeah.
So
Totally agree.
Take
This
the
was good.
take the microphone. Lasse.
If we go back to Vironova and one of our challenges,
This is the rant. Let's go for this.
Yeah.
Let's go with
Yeah,
this.
but that was really
Spot
good.
on.
that's
Spot
one of
on.
our challenges.
Yeah.
We have geniuses coming to us. And as the system is not taking care of that, we as a company need to take action to support them in soft variables. How can we support them to integrate them with Swedish language? We have Swedish language courses in 3 levels that we arrange individually on our
But just
own.
because we do that because they want to learn Swedish, we don't force them.
We
That's
try
just a
to
way to
help
make them feel at home and comfortable and socialize with each other. But you pointed out, where should they live? That's a huge problem. And even for the students coming here to study, where the housing it's very expensive.
No, we had this realization with Spotify that we had our center in Stockholm, and people that wanted to move into engineering.
Yeah.
You know what? It was cheaper and easier to live in New York.
I know.
That's
I know.
Stockholm. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Cheaper, but it was faster to get like an apartment in central Manhattan.
Yeah, faster to get an apartment in central Manhattan than Stockholm.
Even if they are well paid, coming to Spotify, they could easier, and they have the money to pay for an apartment in
Manhattan,
and they can do that
it's
and
just
get it in 2
fascinating.
weeks. But to get it in Stockholm, you either have to pay up like millions and millions of crowns to buy something, but you cannot rent anything, no matter
And I
how
think
you.
the hurdle for them was also the administration.
Yeah.
To employ people from outside Europe is complicated. And the US and Canada, they're really, really good at it. They're trying to attract talent. They're offering them citizenship. They're offering them a lot of things.
So now we are really talking about the AI divide and AI, but we need to also tackle the right problems. And the main problem in AI and
Talents.
everything is talent,
Yeah.
right? It is talent.
Yeah, well-educated people or people who have learned it themselves, doesn't matter. But both of them are necessary. I think it's a shame. I think it's a numbers game. You mentioned that peer reviewing doesn't work, et cetera, because it's hard to get a big scientific community when they can earn a shitload of money working for a big tech company.
But let's flip it now. I mean, we haven't even really presented Vironova in one way, but screw that. Let's go into the real topics. I'll do that later.
Why are you offering us beer?
No. Okay, should we?
Cheers to Goran.
No. Cheers to Goran. I have to. Okay, no. The guests can choose. Do we want to go into what Vironova is all about?
Do a quick
first?
introduction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I tried to do that. I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. So to the hardcore. I know this is people working with artificial intelligence. I'm not good at it, but we're spoiled with some fantastic people working on it. So I said that I started this company is based on egoism. I had all these data in the form of images. I wanted to turn that into evidence or decision support. But because I still think that real intelligence is better than artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is fantastic. It's fast, it can be accurate. If you have the right amount of data, you can train very good algorithms. And this is what we have done. We have taken thousands and thousands of images of vaccines. So what we do when you're producing these virus particles, either for gene therapy or for producing a vaccine, what we do is the quality control. Take a small sample, we take pictures, we look at the virus particles. Are they intact? Are they broken? How many are there? What's their size? These are parameters that the computer can do much more efficient and faster than a human being. It's just cumbersome. It takes a long time. And it's a numbers game. Yeah. If you can take thousands and thousands of images, count particles, et cetera, that's good. And to move into artificial intelligence, just because we have worked with this for 10, 15 years, taking all these images, we sit on fantastic data sets.
Which are annotated.
Yes,
Annotated data.
domain.
Yeah, really, really good ones. Because we touched upon the regulatory requirements to do this. We're simplifying a lot. It's well-trained people. And we have these certifications in our labs, like GLP, Good Laboratory Practice for the virus lab. And we have the world's first GMP, Good Manufacturing Practice lab for electron microscope. We should brag a little bit.
Yeah, we should do the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
and only.
Yeah, it's the first. And that's a good thing.
Worldwide.
Yeah, that's the only one in the world. So it really puts Stockholm on the map.
For the quality of manufacturing of electron microscope.
Yeah, the only ones who can use electron microscopy and who have managed to turn images into evidence. Because what the pharmaceutical companies do, when we have taken these images and we have looked at these variables, how many are there, what's their size, empty, full, we compile that into reports with the statistics. And that's what the pharmaceutical companies use towards the FDA to get approval to produce and sell their drugs. So this is key in this 10 years, $2 billion, the cost and the time.
Yeah.
It's really, really important, patient safety.
But I used to cut in a little bit, because I think we have talked a lot about, how to understand AI and how it amplifies intelligence and how we really want to automate data-intensive type processes. And I think the whole business model of Vironova is sort of explaining, educating a lot of people on how to think about AI and where you want to use algorithms. And you said, I prefer real intelligence, but I love artificial intelligence. It's about understanding what is data-intensive processes, and So
but
I think
instead of having an expert behind a very, very expensive piece of equipment that is difficult to use, we worked on both things: automate and digitalize the equipment to make it more user-friendly, etc., and then try to replace the expert with the software. And you can do that for the simple things that I said: count, measure. There are like 10 variables that a computer can do much, much better, faster, and more accurate than a human being. But what we're good at is looking at the analyzed data and saying what it means.
We have a saying, that AI and humans are good at different things, and they're very different how they work.
This is the point.
AI is really good at going through a huge amount of data, but does so very superficially.
Yeah.
Humans cannot go through thousands of images or a huge amount of data.
Oh, you can. I did my PhD that way. It only takes 7 years.
Good point. Okay, I rephrase myself. Humans cannot.
They hate to do it.
But humans cannot go through a huge amount of data in an efficient way.
Thanks.
But they can go through a small amount of data in a very deep way, that much deeper than any AI can today. So then if you combine the two, which it sounds like you're doing,
the combination,
you actually use AI for what that is good for, going through a huge amount of data, doing the counting, etc., and then having a human analyze the results of that, you get the best of both worlds, right?
Exactly. We would say that we have data acquisition, that's image taking. And from that, we go to the analysis, the fast forwarding, looking at thousands of pictures.
You should really get our hardcore geniuses on here.
We
talk about mathematics, artificial intelligence, image, because it's just fascinating. I find it very, very fascinating.
You have to go through a bit about the tech as well. How do you actually analyze the images?
Yeah, for sure. So it started in mathematics and image analysis. It's called pattern recognition algorithms. That's how it all started. And quite simple things, even for me, being just a hobby mathematician, I could understand. You look at these images, they're all in black and white, 250 shades of gray, and you're looking, the problem was the background. There's a lot of crap in the images, and then you're trying to find these tiny, small, round things. But if you can find the tiny, small, round things and find their center, you can measure the radius and thereby the diameter. So finding them, that means you can count them, you can measure them. And if you can measure them and you know where they are, you can see if they are next to each other or not. That's like aggregation at the cross. And then you can find different kinds of particles, the empty and the full. We talked about this. If you're going to give a gene therapy or vaccine, they need to be full. And if you're developing a drug, like I did, you want to see if they're there or if they're broken. Other quality control aspects. So from pattern recognition algorithms, we took a lot of images. And I mean, artificial intelligence, I don't even know if that existed as a term back in 2000. It was mathematics, algorithms.
It has been around since 1956, I believe. But
okay, sorry.
This is the winter time. I guess.
But still, there are a lot of, at that time, it wasn't any deep learning technology.
But this competition that is taking place every year where you're trying different algorithms when, it was not until 15 years ago that the real good
I think
deep
you mean
learning
ImageNet competition.
Exactly.
Right? So 2012, it was the big moment with the Alex.
And if you look at from 2012 to today, how many different new algorithms or ways pop out. Yeah. So that's where our science and our research is, to try all these new ones on our data sets. But we started with pattern recognition. And then we have
deep learning. Was it even machine learning, or is it more like
both machine learning, deep learning, neural networks?
Yeah.
What's CNN? What does that stand for?
Convolutional neural networks.
But where did it start? Because when it was pattern recognition, this is pre.
Yeah, we started in pattern recognition. We started with mathematics and image analysis.
So probably rule-based in the beginning, and then later turning into machine learning, and then later deep learning with CNN type of.
And the same
models.
people who were working with the image analysis and the mathematics, and so for example, Gustav, who's heading our R&D, he did his PhD for Ida Maria, which is one of the founders of the technology. And now he's head of R&D. Ida Maria, she's CTO, but she's 50% in academia and 50% with us. So she knows what we have.
So Ida Maria is at KTH as well? Or
Uppsala University.
Uppsala, sorry.
Yeah. So she knows the latest things, and her PhD students, so they can try the latest techniques on our data set.
So you have a data set.
What we realize is, because of a service model, we have spent so much time developing software. We even built our own microscope, the world's first desktop version of an electron microscope called the Minitem. And we just did that to integrate software with hardware, to automate and digitalize. Once we have done that, we focus more on the software. But all the data that we have generated over time, as we said, it needs to be annotated. That's why we built our own microscope, integrated our software. We bought a few companies that made digital cameras to make a fully integrated system, and with that we have generated a lot of data. And that data set that's the gold mine of today.
But okay, here I want to use stop and pause, and I'm gonna actually brag a little bit about High Price State Innovation Summit, because I'm going to make a hook to what we're talking about here. So we talked about AI transformation as the main theme of this at the Data Innovation Summit. And when we start looking at contextualizing AI transformation, we're going to have a transformative. This is all going to be transformative. Yada yada yada. It's going to be general purpose tech. AI is going to be pervasive. I propose that you need to always talk about data, AI, software.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I mean, so AI is completely transformative, but you need the data in order to feed the AI.
And what about the experts?
No. Of course,
don't need them, or
that's the people side. But if I try to look at it, good point.
No, qualify the data. I mean.
Yeah. But I was trying to, technically, people get stuck on, it's all about the algorithm. It's all about data science. It's all about the data engineers. And then when you have the algorithm, you need to deploy that algorithm into production somehow, i.e. software. So I just wanted to point that out, that when we've been talking about this stuff, you talk about interchangeably software, algorithm, data as core business perspectives. You can't you can't have AI without the software. You can't have the software without the data. So I just want to make that point clear, to really emphasize that software is extremely important. The algorithm is, so none of them really has any real value without the other ones. Yeah. That's the point. And then the people, let's then talk about how much it's tech and how much it's people and process.
I think we need to rephrase that, because it's one common topic today is called data-centric AI versus model-centric AI. This is from
Andrew
one of
the
pioneers called Andrew Ng. And the traditional academic work, and this is the reason that there is a big difference between industrial and academic use of AI, because in academic use of AI, you usually have a fixed data set and you tweak the model. Yeah. And you tweak the model in extreme and do this kind of weird ensembles, etc. That is not really useful. But they win in some kind of competition and benchmark, and they get a paper published. But in practice, what you can do is you can just tweak the data set instead, improve the quality of the data set, and that hugely will impact the performance.
But how do you improve the data set? So, for example, in our for us, is we have experts who have knowledge about the data, and they can qualify the data. Is that possible to do just with software, to qualify the data?
Partly, yes. There are a number of techniques, like active learning-based techniques, that you can use to try to improve the quality of the data and choose what to actually train on. But instead of spending so much time trying to improve the model, you can instead say, is there some noise in the data that we can remove? Is there some noise in the labels that we use to train the model on that we can improve? can we see that this type of label is potentially missing, sufficient data, but others are overrepresented?
Exactly.
So we can, find a balanced way to make the model training work much better. And if you do that, then the improvement that you get is usually very much higher than whatever tweak you do to the model.
But this is why I love science, because you look at this from a software perspective. But if you sit together with a chemist, a biologist, someone who's working in medicine, you will have so many angles on solving a problem. So if you have a problem that is, let's say nobody have solved it before, like eating an elephant.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to eat it piece by piece, or
probably.
So everybody, if you have this working interdisciplinary, it's so fascinating, because you can have so many different views on the same problem. So if you have one data set, if you have different angles on it, you will see different things. So this is what I say with having experts who are used to,
yes.
If you sit there hours and hours and hours in front of the microscope, basically you just have to look at it and say, that's that.
Domain expertise is super important, of course.
The way question. Is, the bad thing with pattern recognition algorithms is we have taught the computer to do something. So it's expert biased. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, we're trying to work on, feeding the computer with images and then just waiting for the computer to tell us what's in the images. And that's really, really interesting, because when we see what's coming back, the expert can say, oh, wow, did you have that in the... But we didn't see it when we tried to analyze it.
Are you moving into explainable AI as well, when the model is trying to explain why it thinks it has a certain thing? Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, well, I don't know the nomenclature, but we're trying to go from teaching the computer to do something and teach it on our material towards feeding the material and trying to get something out of it, like what's in the image.
So in short, you can basically today, with a number of techniques, try to say, let the AI not only do a prediction, let's say in your case, a number of virus particles or whatnot, but instead also, besides doing the prediction, say, why do I think it has five particles here? And it has to highlight an image, basically, so you can motivate and describe why I thought, this is the number of particles it found. And then you can see, it actually looks at something completely horrible. There's a classical example of this. This is a paper from 2015 called Why Should I Trust You? And they had a really biased data set where they want to predict if it's a wolf or a husky, a normal dog or a wolf. The thing with the collection of data, they just collected wolf images from forests with snow. And all the dogs was from more
domestic,
from city kind of environments. And then you train a model, and the model didn't even look at the dog. It just looked at the environment and see every time you see snow, it will be a wolf.
Clever.
And it had 99% accuracy, but it was completely useless.
Yeah, but we wouldn't see that.
But if you have these kind of explainable techniques, you would. Yeah. But if you don't, you can be fooled by having a really biased data set.
So it's the whole how to look into the black box, right? Yeah. We don't really need to look into the black box. We can ask the AI also to explain to us why what's the core parameters he based it on.
But like we touched upon, how do we get people to study engineering? I mean, I started in hardcore science, like studying too much, doing too much research. But now that we're applying it, it's also very interesting to do research applied to a certain problem. For example, if we look at our virus particles, we look, are they empty or full? But what about all the intermediate forms?
Right.
That's also interesting. So if our customer, if they ask us that question, we will try to figure out. And that's a very challenging question. That's where the artificial intelligence comes in.
We
are a little bit biased. Yeah.
I mean, it's like AlphaGo, or AlphaZero, and these kind of recent models that learn us how to play chess or Go or these kind of other games. And when they surpass human level in performance for all these games, you start to have them becoming a teacher for you as a human, because they find patterns that humans haven't found before, and they find ways to play the game that you couldn't think of or didn't even know about. And perhaps you can do that, for your use case as well, where an AI suddenly finds some kind of pattern. If it's broken or not, I'm not sure about your domain, because I have no understanding of that.
But human error can be a good thing in research. if you forget a sandwich and you have fungus growing on it,
Yes,
you can get penicillin. But when
true.
a computer does something wrong, then it's something wrong with the compilation and the testers.
You will claim something else.
So human error or creativity, we always try to cheat a little bit.
Yes.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah, agreed.
So I don't know where to go next, because I think we started off on some big topics that we can circle back on, or now we've gone down a little bit the tech rabbit hole. Do we want to continue on that in a little bit more?
Some way to finish up. You have built a company since 2005, right?
Yeah.
And you are today over 100, or how big are you? 100 employees?
140
Yeah.
people. So,
But let's talk about the composition of those 140 people.
Just a second.
Sorry. Always. We jump on each other. Sorry, man.
Great.
Go first.
So for people that want to know, I want to build a company as well, similar to yours perhaps, or in some other field, but to actually be managing to build a company to the success that you have today. Can you just share perhaps some advice of mistakes you made, or something that you really love about, this I did really well, causing me to have the success I have today?
this is basically one thing. It's about recruiting the right people.
Yes.
So good recruitments and bad recruitments. That summarizes all.
And now you just have to tell us, how do you recruit the right people?
Yeah, that's a challenge, actually. Yeah. So we started out more like a group of friends. I always call them my family, but, well, and I still think so. If you're passionate about something and you like what you do, that just makes things a little bit easier. So we started with a bunch of people with scientific background, basically researchers, trying to solve a problem that was a problem that we needed to solve to make our lives easier. Like I said, it was a very egoistic thing, having data in the form of images and not being able to convince someone that this is what I see, this is correct, do you see it? And they say no. And another fascinating thing is to work interdisciplinary.
Okay, having the right mix of competences.
Yeah, I think that's the key to success here. To be able to communicate between sciences, like I'm a chemist, but personal chemistry. That's the most important thing. So I was like, I came from chemistry, I went into biology, which is more complex. So if you go to chemistry and like physical chemistry, that's mathematics, very logical. And then you go to biology, which is very complex, many variables at the same time. And medicine, where you try to apply it, try to solve some problems. So we worked in the interface between technology and medicine using very, very advanced equipment, electron microscope, expensive, complicated, that we needed to automate and things. And then we had the actual problem to solve. But we managed to communicate and collaborate.
But okay, let me ask a very concrete question. How do you do recruitment interviews?
I actually don't do them anymore. I only recruit the management team. Sorry to say this, but I recruited friends. You're sitting next to Mats here.
No, but
That's
I
safe.
can go back 3 years. That's the timeline that I have back here. And then this actually goes back to, if we go to 2005 and 2015 and so forth, there wasn't the great divide between that many departments, that it's still growing, of course, as we are commercializing more and more of our services and also products, our solutions. So that means that we have more skill sets that we need to acquire and retain within Vironova. That means also we need an HR department, which probably wasn't needed 2010. I don't know how many we were at 2010, but now we are over 100. So there's a lot of different organizational challenges that just touches this question. How do you perform interviews? They are, of course, different if you do them in an ARR research and innovation center, where you might need to do concrete cases for the people that you try to hire. If we go to the sales and marketing department, you have other skill sets that you need to align with. So that's actually something that we have built up the last 3 years.
Oh, really?
Yes, to see. Of course, there was a process for it before, but the structure there to be able to scale up, as we are a scale-up company, that means that we need to do interviews in a processed way with the search. And if we qualify the people, we have a candidate that we need to take, in many cases from a different country. what kind of pre-boarding activities do we have for that person coming from India? So they get integrated and get help with all the administrative work that we talked about before. How do we onboard them fast when they come to Vironova, where we have a diversity of different knowledge, skill sets in different, not silos, but departments within Vironova. So they ramp up fast and create business value for Vironova within 3 or 6 months, or I would guess like in 1 week would be super great. But we all know that organizational change takes time, and onboarding is just one of those parameters that we need.
Okay, yeah, onboarding for sure, it's hard, but still you have to make a decision of this is the person I want. And let's say you have a team, develop the hardware or some part of the software, or I don't know, some part of the chemistry or the medicine that you want to do.
No, in the beginning it was expertise, like knowledge. That was the foundation for recruiting.
Not that much
people.
Engineering.
Well, best of the best. Like you need some really, really clever people to solve some really, really complex problems. So that's all PhDs. Or we have 2 professors, professor in chemistry, medicine. We had one in mathematics. A lot of PhDs. So people who were working on this in an academic research setting. That was a starting point. And if you go from 2005 when we founded the company and to 2015, it was basically a research organization. Funded with grants, like 200 million crowns in grants.
Right.
Developing the technology, developing drugs against influenza virus. No venture capitalist would have founded that. Like if someone comes.
Are you sure?
Yeah, not in Sweden. Well, we have a lot of good funding from entrepreneurs who have built companies themselves. They have a really, really good understanding. If you go through a due diligence with the VC or PE, people think that's complicated. No. If you have an entrepreneur who has built a company, they ask the right questions, like you are. How did you recruit people? How do you recruit people? Who are in your management team? How are you recruiting people? These are very, very important things. How you build your organization. How many teams are functional? If you have a team with 5 people and suddenly they're 20, it causes a lot of friction. Of course.
Yes.
And not everybody can be a manager having employees.
Right.
And some researchers, you have to lock them into a room sometimes.
Exactly.
But they really like that.
Yeah, we
Don't
have
disturb them.
maturity levels of the different departments, of course.
Really challenging.
But what I would say for the recruitment process is that we, of course, have different stages in the interviews, and if you have cases, and bringing up different persons to meet with the actual person to see both. To check out what the values are for the person, what's the ability to learn fast, and then the skill sets that are different from the different departments. So that's Ray Dalio stuff, of course, if you hear ability, values, and skill sets. But that's pretty much
personality is very, very important in the beginning.
Generalize around it.
I have one question. Having built a company up till 100 people, I think you mentioned something which is very good, because when you start a company, usually you invite people that you feel trust with, or you know people that you know that they know the business and etc. So you start, right? And then at some point of time, there is a number when the threshold becomes like, oh shit, now we are a company. I need to hire management to actually deal with all of these things. Yep. What was the number for you?
No, a group of 20 is quite okay.
Good. Thank you.
To be a manager. Yeah, but then, for example, now we have a quite big management team, like 10 people. And we also have subsidiaries, or in Swedish we say daughter companies, with CEOs running it and so on. So if you acquire a company and you have a group of people who are good at working together, let them be. We try to integrate them. We had a cowboy and Indian party, but it doesn't work. You know, let the people who know each other as a team work as a team, and then you just take the manager and let the manager work with the management team. And this is complicated.
Yeah, this is complicated.
Because it's very, very easy to lose what's called company culture. Yes. If you have a chemist and a computer scientist, they don't understand each other. But do they have to? No, but they want to. So it's if they want to, give them beer and food and let them talk. But don't force it upon them. You know, I don't want to know what the chemical formula for that is. I don't give a shit. But we have you. Great, you know that. Wow, I'm proud of you.
But now we're going into some of the core topics, which is, given what you got awards from. But one of the core, super cool things with Vironova, and we are already touching upon it a little bit, is that you essentially, as a core business model or business idea, you're dealing with intersectional innovation. So you're dealing with data and data science, computer software innovation, together with what you just say,
tech and medicine.
Tech and medicine.
For sure.
So hardcore. If you want to extrapolate, what is the core AI transformation all about? Is about infusing AI and data and software in any business domain. And here we have a core business model where you are basically living the dream. Living the dream of what Scania wants to do or what Vattenfall wants to do in order to get data driven, right? So how the hell do you get that lingo to work? Between I usually joke, how do you get people that speak Python and people that speak Latin to find their common ground?
Quite easy, actually. If you have very, very intelligent people.
I thought we would say beer.
It's very easy. Get beer.
Yeah, but that helps us. Don't spoil it now. But if you have very, very intelligent people, they usually know that they are intelligent.
Yeah.
But the best intelligent people are the ones who don't tell you that they are very intelligent.
Yes, good. Well
they're
said.
quite, how to say, ödmjuk in Swedish.
Yeah, they're humble and
they're very humble
and still curious, maybe.
Curious.
And want
so
to learn about
don't
the
take away the curiosity. Don't tell an intelligent people how to do this, like step 1, step 2, step 3. If you do that, you take away all the fun thing. But it's also very, very difficult as a manager. If you're going to tell them, can you go and paint that red? No. You're like, do we need to paint that? And then you go away. But and then they will not only paint that, they will rebuild it and make it nice, and they will offer you beer to show you what they have painted.
But so one of the management techniques is actually not to connect all the dots.
Exactly.
Is actually to leave the question frame, so Croatian management style, maybe, I don't know.
I think that's the benefit of
coaching.
You have to admit to yourself that I'm good at this, I'm bad at that. And when you acknowledge that, then you want to hire. Okay, shit, I'm bad at this. I need to hire someone who's much better than me on that. And when you hire that person, give them the responsibility.
Yeah.
You can learn from them. But for example, if you have a good management team, if you throw in a question, I can have a solution, or I believe I have a solution to it. But if I ask my management team and I listen to all the 10 different, it actually becomes like 10 times better.
Yeah, but let's go nerdy on the mechanics of getting someone with a medical background and someone with the actual computer science background. How do they work? What is the lingo? In hardcore down, how have they found their pace as a team? How does that work?
I think it's quite it's quite easy. Medicine is complex, many variables, many problems. And engineers, they like to solve problems. So if you have the ones with the complicated problems, asking the engineer to solve it, that's good enough.
So then
that's how we work.
It's a little bit like you get them, they play well together. Let's bring this in as kids in a candy store having fun playing with toys. And they have something to, basically the problem becomes the common denominator where we can find.
Problem solving. Yeah.
Problem solving.
Someone has got a problem. Someone has got a solution. In our case, for example, I was looking at these images, at viruses. So the image analysis toolbox, that's a little bit easier. They have some tools. Okay. Then it's about finding the right tool. But then in mathematics, you can develop new tools, or you can modify the tool to make it better to your application. So that's basically how we did it. I had a problem. I needed to solve it. I asked people working with image analysis. I asked people working with mathematics. And together, we solved the problem. But
actually, to make it really simple, we take the Swedish citat. Lika barn leker bäst, men olika barn hittar på de bästa lekarna. Together. It's a little bit, if we're going to take it.
Can you say that in English?
Have fun at work.
Equal childs play well,
yes,
but different children comes up with the best games.
Yes.
That's a good one.
But it's difficult. That's the good thing with the software development. That's their own language. You don't have to speak Swedish or English. You're doing coding. You're coding. It's the same with mathematics. It's
Unless
numbers.
you're Microsoft and you're turning the programming language into Swedish, which is horrible. I hate it. But that's another question. Yes. Okay. But still, okay. So there are a number of these kind of ideas about how to keep the company as productive as possible and also happy as possible, which is actually, I would argue, like a sub-component of being productive. If you keep the people and the employees happy, then they will be productive as well. But
But the most intelligent people want to work with the most complicated problems. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And to keep motivation or passion for your work, you really need to have a real passion for your work. I mean, I think it's easier for us. We're working with combating virus infections. It's a good cause.
It is.
Yeah. It's not about making money. It's about curing disease, saving lives.
But you must have a number of like boring tasks you have to do to actually,
That's what I do.
counting particles and whatnot, Now you hopefully can automate that, but still I'm sure there are a number of boring tasks you still have to do.
Yeah, but you have to share the success as well, like even small successes. For example, when we got the GMP certification, the day after we celebrated with champagne and stuff like that, not everybody understood how big that is.
How many years from different departments
like
that had been
10, 15 years of work, and then suddenly it happened. So it's the same with many companies. It's like 10, 15 years of hard work, and then immediate success. It's not immediate success. It's not overnight success. It's a lot of hard work, but a lot of people. Then there's also a lot of pride. If I worked like 10 years trying to build a microscope, and then suddenly it works, that's... how to say, a big ego.
Probably should move into what GMP actually is. I think we said that a number of times.
But it's just about the employees. If the employees can feel part of, the success, and they are. I mean, I cannot do anything anymore. It's all about the clever people that we have and how good they work together.
Right.
That's how you solve problems. And they should really be proud and happy about the things that they managed to do.
Actually, I want to have time. I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to have time to explore some of the awards that Vironova has got, because I think they open up new, very interesting conversations. So you had the Hitachi Transformation Award in 2019, and then you got the Life Science Star Award in 2021. Show them.
Yep.
This is super cool stuff.
You go over here.
So which one should we start with? Because they open up different conversations, I think. They're really, really good conversation starters on different topics of success.
This is
I think
continuing on people and diversity management.
Yeah, I know that. So we should be starting that, or should we start?
So the Sweden Bio, that's the organization.
That was right recently, right?
Yeah, that's the companies in the life science industry, like pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, medtech. So this is great.
This week or September or something like this?
A month ago.
A month ago, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the best prize, actually.
Yeah.
By peers. A prize from your peers telling you that we have the most talented people employed at Vironova.
So what was the motivation, or what is the category? What does it mean? So
I think that it was that we were...
this is an ego boast. Now you go on.
I'm bad at bragging, but
we can be American
able to recruit
sometimes.
the best of the best to a quite small company in a small country where it's cold and dark in November. Really, really talented people from all over the globe, actually. I think we should mention also some of the really great students come here to study or do their PhD that we managed to make them stay in Sweden working with us, a small company, not even profitable yet, and making them work together. And it's not only about recruiting people. You asked about how do you recruit them, is how do you keep them? Because if you recruit them and they don't like it, they leave.
I mean, that's what I mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
You can actually have really good people in Sweden given the educational system we have, but you need to keep them as well. And I remember from my Spotify days, that's super, super tough.
Yeah.
And you have to change. I mean, if you look at being a research organization, developing a product, that's one thing. When you go through a commercial phase, when it's all sales, marketing, and like now communication, it's totally different skill sets. I think one of the benefits is we have a lot of hardcore scientists who are really, really good at communicating. I think that's exceptional.
That's cool.
That's exceptional because they're really, really good. We have, for example, in sales, we have application specialists. I mean, the ones who are really the experts selling the product or the education. Once you buy the product or the solution from us, you have to explain how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. That's also
I could go on forever for this.
Please,
just to highlight application specialists who are in the intersection between virology, knowing the software, the AI applications of it, or the deep learning aspects of it.
And can do the storytelling for the whole thing.
Do the storytelling in the pre-sales. Now we talk our language, pre-sales, and then on the onboarding when people decided to
and needs to be trained how to use it properly.
So then it's onboarding training and then
change management.
Yes, and then they are also involved with the customer success. How do we retain our customers if we have a SaaS model and want to have a recurring revenue model for our software? So it's impossible without these geniuses. So of course they come from an academic background, but they are working in a commercial sense. And then of course we have other commercial people working with core sales. That's not easy at all. So the diversity of our different teams, that's the key. I can just
let's get into this because the way I understood when I read the jury's recognition here, and the way I remember I did a LinkedIn post. And I was like, and I remember it's like goosebump moment because we talk about diversity and we talk about the challenges in Sweden of getting talent in. And here one company is getting it done, man. This is the way I read that. You're getting it done. You are getting through the red tape. You're getting the talent in and you're creating a diversified company with all different nationalities in Sweden, and I think it's used kick-ass. So why don't we just go
diversity
nuts on
is
this
not
topic?
The color of your skin, first of all. So we didn't think about this.
No.
So we have Max talking about artificial intelligence. This is for you, Max Pilström, a genius. He's young, very young. Like 23, 24.
This is
I think he's got a mustache, but I haven't
he's
checked.
He's a philosopher.
And then we have a Professor Jan Bergman, 80.
Yeah,
that's diversity. Having someone who's 80 years old working at the company. He was kicked out of the university when he turned 67. We built a lab for him. He's like a grandfather of Vironova. And he's a genius. And, he's calm. He's experienced. That's a good thing. Then they have the young trying out the new things. But mentorship is really, really great. So you have diversity in age. Nationalities, yes. We didn't think about that. It's just the fact that 50% of the PhDs are international students.
I can put numbers on that.
Let's recruit the best.
I can put numbers on that one.
Okay,
36% of our employees are PhD degrees.
Really?
That's hardcore.
The average age of a Vironovian is 43 years old. And the span is from a little bit over 20 years old and plus 80 with John Bergman. And then we have 22 different nationalities. That doesn't mean like the ethnicity of it. It's that the people have different backgrounds, experiences that contribute to the boiling template that we have.
I can't shut up more. You are my heroes because you are talking about diversity in the real sense and not in terms of some political game of what we are trying to, I don't know. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm
so
quite
the way you're talking about
the way you're talking about diversity is also educational background.
Yes,
as we talk, like working interdisciplinary, having scientists and commercial people working together. That's also diversity. And like Mats touched upon, for our sales, it used to be, I call it lab coat selling, an expert selling to an expert. But then if you're selling an equipment that costs you 7.5 million crowns, you have to talk to the guy in the suit. And I'm sorry to say it's a guy in the suit, but real world.
You have a suit yourself.
And that's another, but that's another aspect of diversity. If you look at our management team, the future is not a man's world anymore. That's history. That's the 60s in the music. The women today are the ones who are studying, who are well educated, and they're hardworking.
And we could loop from here to go from the diversity and the need of that to our different business models. We have complex solutions or sales that we that's our common denominator. And we come back to our background. Not transactional, but traditional selling. When we talk about our services to a large amount of different companies all around the world.
So your portfolio of your business model is actually from quite complex type business you're doing. I mean, like a longer sales cycle to something which is quite, a service, a subscription.
Exactly. And the service doesn't need us to talk to the business suit. So it's not transactional, traditional. And we have complex sales where multiple stakeholders, they are in suits and lab coats, and it's procurement, and it's, it's hurdles.
That's a challenge, actually, to have, like we started in software, and then we integrated software with the hardware, then we built hardware. So investors, for example, they like you to be a software company with a SaaS model, margin, profit. So we're a service company, but we sit on our own software and hardware, and we are the experts of using it. And we also have the regulatory certification, the GMP and GLP that you talked about.
Let's go there as well.
Yeah. So now we're a service company, but the complexity is, everybody wants to put a brand on you.
Yes. Yeah. Pigeonhole you in are you doing this sale or this sale or this product?
We don't accept that. We're Vironova. This is what we do. This is your problem. This is how we solve it. It's a solution. How we solve it, not your problem. But we're solving it for you.
You say you're a service company then.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can elaborate a bit more. What is the business model of Vironova?
It's actually a service, as I said. So we have developed our own microscope that is user-friendly, automated, digitalized. So
you don't sell it, you rent it, or what?
Before the pandemic, yes. But what happened now, the last 2 years with the travel restrictions and so on, we started. First we built the Minitam, a small desktop version of an electron microscope. So we had a problem with the scalability there. So we partnered with, there are only 3 companies in the world producing electron microscopes. 2 are Japanese. One is American, former Dutch, Philips, now part of Thermo Fisher, and Hitachi and JL in Japan. So in order to get the scalability, we partnered with Hitachi. They invested in the company. We put our software on their machine, called ViroTem, specifically made to look at viruses. And that sounds like a great thing in 2020 when we launched the product, but we couldn't reach out to our customers and install it because we were prevented, and Swedish people were not allowed to come to anyone at this time. So we launched the product beginning of 2020. We installed and sold one in Japan at the university. We sold another one. We haven't installed it yet. That was the scalability. Hitachi can produce 100 per year. The Minitam, we could produce like 10. But suddenly we couldn't sell microscopes. But you could still send samples. So what the pharmaceutical companies, they actually like that model more because it's more comfortable for them.
All of a sudden, you pivoted to another completely different
business.
We
had to. It was just survival.
So you're going, instead of putting the equipment in their facilities, as a service, they send the samples to you, and now you can do it as a service even.
Yes, and but Ingmar Stenmark, luck comes to the well-prepared. Yeah, so we were very lucky because we were prepared. And the thing was, we got this GMP certification of our lab 31st of January 2020.
Time is perfect.
Yeah.
So, and now what is GMP in this nutshell? Because I think GMP now
very good.
Helps you to have the trust for this service model to work.
Exactly. So if you look at the life science industry, one of the issues is all the regulatory framework that you have to work according to. And as I said, it's all about patient safety. So we have like one lab with a GLP certification, and the electron microscopy lab is a GMP, good manufacturing practice.
The one in the world.
The only one in the world, yeah. And meaning the only one in the world is that the analysis of the data that we have generated is according to GMP, meaning well-educated people, calibrated instruments, etc., etc.
So GMP is a certification standard.
Yeah. So it means that the pharmaceutical companies, once we have done the quality control of their vaccines, they can use that data towards the FDA
directly.
To get approval to produce and sell their product.
So the difference in FDA processing steps, boom, you just took away a whole step by coming out GMP certified straight out of what you've done.
Yeah, you can invest in the company.
I get it.
We take that after. But no, but it's really important. It's a big step because we're talking about science here and basic research. That's a very open-minded, creative atmosphere. Working according to GMP or GLP, that's strict.
And this is ultimately, and you have FDA in the States, and what is the equivalent in Europe?
EMEA.
And which one is tougher?
No, Sweden is a good country because the Swedish FDA, so to speak, Sweden is like a court system. Many international conflicts take place in Sweden because we are a democracy and we're knowledgeable, and the legal system is trustworthy. Yep. It's the same with the Swedish FDA and the fact that we have Astra Zeneca, we had Pharmacia, so we have a lot of knowledge about this. So being a Swedish company is a good brand.
Yeah, and it's also, if you take EMA and FDA, they're harmonized in a legal way when you look at the quality aspects of it. So an FDA stamp should be the same stamp as an EMA or Läkemedelsverket qualification.
I need to admit, I'm a little bit indoctrinated to all these challenges, and I saw my mom getting gray hair faster than normal. She worked as the medical director for Makia, working with these processes.
Yep.
So Makia is doing
it's a lot of
anesthesia
paperwork.
stuff. Alltså respiratorer. A lot of shit, a lot of work. And then audits and all this.
And that's in a clinical environment with medtech equipment.
Is clinical. But it's, I don't know, this is a different, if you're not into this world of medtech and this, it's the trial 1, 2, 3, all this stuff. It's what do you say, 10 years process, and it's not driven by, it's driven by regulations, literally.
But the interesting thing here is knowledge about software and also about combining software and hardware. What we've been fascinating about is that some companies are like pure hardware companies. They don't do software. They're a hardware company, and they don't even do services. Basically, services, installation, and changing oil and filter. But combining now the industry is like integration of software with hardware. That's where everything is happening.
Yeah, but let's go here now. Then where is the whole medical industry going? Because I mean, like clearly I can go to Ericsson and I can see the radio base station was 75% hardware. Now it's not even 20% hardware. And when we get into 5G, is 50% algorithms and then software. So it's the whole world turning from hardware to software, or hardware sold as part of the software.
Yep.
I see this as a major disruption in the medtech industry, where we have some laggards who hasn't figured this out yet.
Yes,
do you agree?
Yes. Yeah, and we talked about the FDA and the EMEA.
Do they understand this?
They have been really good.
Okay.
Fast at adopting, allowing medtech devices that are like software devices, basically on a piece of hardware, measuring your heart rate, heartbeat, and insulin.
This is my case.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really interesting how fast they have approved some gadgets.
Because I was going to ask that if the FDA and the regulatory bodies has kept up with the AI and software transformation of the world, and in some ways I think they have.
I think they have. It's a very, very conservative, tough regulatory environment. But actually, one of our obstacles, or for our customers, is when it comes to gene therapy, for example, there are still some regulatory things that need to be in place that are not there yet, like setting a threshold. If you work with artificial intelligence or software, you usually want to know as an engineer, like, what's good enough? Is it 75%? Is it 85%? Or and that's a challenge for our customers. They don't know, or they don't have a law to follow or a regulatory framework to follow with some of the variables.
Because, go.
So you don't have a Tesla moment when Tesla tried to launch in Sweden, and they have continuous update of their software in the cars, and they have to be certified to drive on the roads in Sweden, and then basically have to get recertified for every update, which happens every week.
Yes.
So that was a big problem, and basically the regulatory bodies was not prepared for that. Would you say the Swedish FDA is better equipped to handle this, or?
Well, it's true. You cannot just do a software update without knowing if that software update is good. You have to certify it, because it's about safety. This is the same as the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, driving a car is not only about you; it's about everybody else driving a car. And you, as a driver on the road, you want to make sure that the other ones, even if you're not driving a Tesla, that the car is functional. Yeah.
That's one of the complexities here with software or AI in this environment. So updates or upgrades, new releases and so forth, software, AI or non-AI enabled, it's for the customer. When they have a process, they don't want to change that process because of the regulatory bodies.
Yes.
So
Costly.
Yeah, costly. So if you have some functional process that is working, you don't want to change that. So the earlier we can get into the clinical phase or in preclinical phases with our solutions, the better.
So
but don't you foresee the problem though if you have to recertify every time you do an update for the model that you are using? Or
if you go to something that is closer to your own life, like let's take a pacemaker.
Yes.
Would you be safe with having those live updates of your pacemaker without having them certified?
Not without, but I would like to have continuous update, and I would like to have an automated pipeline certifying that. In normal software development, you have this kind of concepts called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, and if it passed the test, the CI part, it should be directly deployed. And I wish you could have like a CI for certification.
Yeah,
like an automated process that.
Are we going in this direction?
But now we're talking to someone who's knowledgeable about software. For me, for example, I know viruses, I know vaccines. I cannot understand anti-vaxxers, for example.
No,
because they're not knowledgeable, but they get afraid. So let's imagine someone else who's got a pacemaker who doesn't know anything about software. Do you think they would be comfortable with having automatic updates? No, I don't think so. Not without having the certification.
If you have an FDA that you trust and you know that they are doing the best they can to do it, then I would be.
But aren't we talking about something else?
I agree.
We need the certification, but we need then to have a relevant type of process around certification for the first, innovation versus the upgrades of the innovation.
Yeah. This goes back to this discussion started about. It takes 10 years and costs a lot of money to develop a drug. Why? Because of the regulatory system. You first have to test it on healthy individuals to make sure that it doesn't harm you. So it's easy to kill a virus, but it's difficult to do it without killing the patient. That's for sure. So
we should remember.
So you cannot give a drug.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, well, that's true. And it's the same thing. It's not difficult to do a hardware update, but to be really safe about it. Yeah. And it's the same with the vaccine. You cannot give a vaccine that actually kills people.
No, that's not a good idea.
It's not allowed. Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's a bad idea.
The problem is it takes such a long time and costs an awful lot of money.
But where do you see the trend here? I mean, because software and AI will become more and more pervasive in these types of technologies. How is FDA or how are you tackling that to get the speed up and all that? Or
I think there's a fantastic future for artificial intelligence as a decision support.
And tester even.
Not as a solution to all our problems. I mean, we're going to work on the climate change and cure more diseases and so on. It's going to be a fantastic decision support for people in many, many disciplines. For example, for a physician. For a physician, they need to meet a patient, but simple things like measuring the temperature or the pulse or the heart rate, that can be automated. And you can get all that data immediately. Yeah. And simple things.
Yeah, it's also an industry that if we talk about gene cell therapy, it's pretty young and novel. So there's a lot of orthogonal methods around that and different certifications around that. So we're working to create a golden standard for that, actually, with transmission electron microscopy supported by our software
It's
services.
just too high tech, as you have heard. The electron microscope, that's most advanced hardware. You have the most advanced software. You have all these experts. But when we try to solve problems, it goes fast. It's very accurate, and we can charge for it, which makes it a business, not only research. So I think the funny thing is the pace of how we can generate new knowledge. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It just goes faster and faster. The problem is, can we apply it to real problems?
Yes.
So we need more applied science, probably.
And we need more companies that can actually, certify the quality of the drugs, like Vironova, right?
Yeah. I totally agree.
I would be surprised if you said no.
Good point.
It's a demand.
But if we move more into, it's only a quarter left before 2 hours.
There's a couple of more topics. You can start. I have a couple of angles I would like to explore, but if you want to take one first.
Yeah, but then I'm going to move to some AI questions and just hear your thoughts about that. And one of the big revolutions that we've seen by DeepMind, for example, in the medical field is the AlphaFold model. And in short, I'm not a medical expert, but I will try to explain what it does, which is trying to predict what the protein 3D structure is given the sequence that they have. and in that way try to understand the function of those proteins in a better way. Am I correct so far, or can you just...
This is hardcore Vironova. This is where most of our employees have their background.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, okay, so what the AlphaFold thing did back in 2020 was they were able to predict this 3D structure using deep learning technologies and these transformer-based models, Evo Former and whatnot it was called. But they went from a prediction score, or this kind of GDP thing, a distance score, from around 40, and the top score is 100%. But they went from 40 first to 60 with the first version, and then over like 90 in GDP, very close to 100. And they basically say that at 90, you basically have predicted the exact structure that the protein has, and in that way can describe the functionality of the protein to an extent that is, more or less perfect.
Yep.
That you can just, understand what it means. What do you think of discoveries like this? Do you think that will have a big impact on, drug discovery in general, or?
It does. It has already. It's all about seeing is believing. So to make three-dimensional crystals of proteins, that's not new. It's quite old. But the thing is, when you crystallize a protein, it's not the native form of your protein. When the protein is in the body, is in a solution or in a membrane. When you crystallize it, is a physical shape and form. Like if you look, what's the shape of water? It's not the same as ice. Ice is a crystal form of water.
Right.
So the thing to really see the proteins in their native form, you have to use electron microscopy.
Oh.
So this is back to the Nobel Prize in 2018, cryo-electron microscopy, what we do.
Right.
So it's all about you freeze your sample, and then you look at the three-dimensional, you do, it's called a reconstruction. This is also hardcore mathematics and software. You have a sample, then you tilt it 60 degrees that way, 60 degrees that way, and then you pile it all together, and you get a 3D model of your protein. And the resolution, that's like how good the magnification is called measured in ångström, Swedish phenomenon time, 10 up to the minus 9 from Uppsala University. But the thing is, if you have that shape then of your protein, as you mentioned, how do you turn that knowledge into something how can you apply it?
Yeah.
So how they apply it in the pharmaceutical industry is try to dock. If you have a small molecule, you try to find out where should that small molecule bind. Going back to the icosahedral, did someone call and say how many?
Do we have it? No.
I have to reveal that before we end that.
Yes.
So that's where this three-dimensional structures comes in. You have the building blocks, the proteins. You can try to dock and simulate. Does your pharmaceutical compound bind to it or not? Or where should it bind? Yeah. And this has been done. But the problem is, this is a simulation. And that's good. It's good to simulate and try out. So could you have to try it in a wet lab, and you have to try it in animals, and you have to try it in healthy humans, et cetera, et cetera. And
that makes a lot of sense. So would it be accurate to say a statement like this? You could use simulation or this kind of predictions that AlphaFold can make to try to find a potential protein or some drug that you believe had the right characteristics or properties that you're looking for. And then when you find top 3 candidates for this, then you can do the proper test using, for example, Vironova.
And this is a much cheaper way and much faster way to do a screening.
Yes, exactly.
But it's not sure that it works, as I said, because that's the crystal form of your protein and it's not the native form. But it works as a simulation tool to try to find.
You have drastically reduced the time for a big portion of the pre-work, and then when you do the wet lab work, which is quite tedious and expensive, you are starting from best possible sample, so to speak.
But efficiency, yes. Effectiveness, that's what you're after. It might not be the right choice, but efficiency.
Yeah, but you went from 10,000 samples down to 10.
So if you take this as an example, many big pharmaceutical companies have set up big screening labs like this, testing thousands and thousands of molecules for their targets but we have a Swedish professor, Arvid Carlsson. He won the Nobel Prize by saying it's just a waste of time and money because you have to try it in real life, like mouse model or on humans, because I told you, it's easy to kill a virus, but can you keep the patient alive? That's the problem. So with the screening, you can kill the virus, but can you do it keeping the patient alive? And this is the hurdle. And then we come back to updates and regulatory aspects.
But you don't see any value in doing the simulation first?
Yes,
okay,
definitely. And it's not only about looking at proteins. Proteins are building blocks of bigger things. For example, at Vironova, many of us, we work with 3-dimensional reconstructions of virus particles. That's how we found out that the capsid is an icosahedral. And maybe you can see a membrane. Maybe you can see what proteins are in the membrane. And that's the protein that we should put into the mRNA vaccine because it's on the surface, et cetera, et cetera. So it's used already.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And it gives a lot of understanding. And just by seeing is believing, it gives a lot of understanding about what you're working with. It's very valuable.
But it's back to where do you use the AI and where do you use the sort of the human or the wet lab, so to speak. So how to get, we call it augmented intelligence,
Yeah, but still, I think the AI is in different phases here. So
yes.
First, it's used for doing the simulation and finding candidates,
Yes.
and then you use AI as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a more of a proper wet lab kind of control or quality control. Right?
Yeah, we have a very specific application. It's only one part of AI. I mean, deep learning, neural networks, and image analysis. Then there are many, many other forms. So what we see in the pharmaceutical industry, if you look at the big giants and what they're doing, they're doing more patient registries, right? Big data sets that are common
trial
knowledge.
1, 2, 3 type stuff as well.
Yeah. But these most advanced things that we're talking about, that's more simulation. So I think you probably have much better examples than about how AI have been
But
applied
ultimately,
to.
AI becomes pervasive, and if you understand the core problem and what data can do, you can apply it. Here is in the simulation perspective, here is in the quality assurance perspective, and here we have it in the trial perspective. And all of a sudden, we are actually proving from one core domain how AI becomes pervasive. And it's not like someone sits on the high fly and do an end-to-end AI. No, it's a narrow AI problem here, it's another one here, and it's a third one here. And they're all, the compounding effect of how AI is then improving the end-to-end value chain is absolutely massive.
I think what's really interesting is artificial intelligence that is unbiased. I mean, when we haven't told them what's true or false, if we give them the data, feed the data, and the AI tells us what's in it, that's really, really interesting. And I think a lot is going to come out of that because humans, we try to cheat and we do errors and things. And computer science is really about feeding the computer with what they should do.
Objective in that way.
But what's interesting is to see the other way around. If you can give a data set.
This is the whole topic of ethical AI, and we put harder with this is biased. Come on, what is really biased is the human physical processes.
But I have to also give a short
but who's right and who's wrong?
I don't know.
But unfortunately, I'm also reviewing a bit of a regulation coming up in EU, etc., from the upcoming AI Act, etc. And there is one statement that says, if you want to use a data set for AI, it has to be completely error-free and unbiased.
Then we don't
Who's behind it? Who's behind it?
So you're explaining why we don't have any tech giants in Europe. GDPR.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's horror. Yeah, it's just beyond belief, in my view, how they can even write that. But also, bias can be. I think bias is not always bad. I must, and what I mean with this is, the right type of bias is really important. And then there are bad biases. So, I mean, an AI algorithm, if you have a data set without any biases, it will be completely random. But then if you have this kind of subjective biases that comes outside of the data set, which humans has, because they use, knowledge from other reasons that is not really connected to the problem you're trying to look at, that's problematic, that's subjective. So, I mean, the term bias here is a bit ambiguous, Some bias is good, other biases.
Yeah, we generally talk about bias as something bad. I mean, like in all our conversations, and you are trying to highlight that. Well, you can also highlight that bias is the reasoning or the bigger intellect of the general intelligence of a human directing the algorithm in a certain way.
I mean, sometimes a gender bias is actually a good thing because it really, is useful information, but it has to be related to the problem at hand. If it's
We're coming to very philosophical questions here. What's right and what's wrong, and
exactly.
it's very challenging.
I think you need to keep it objective. If you
but there are many other drivers. I mean, the technical development, like storage of data, computer power. There are so many other drivers. So, and that's the nice thing with fundamental research or basic research. You don't know what the next big thing is.
Yeah.
So that's why we do basic research, because it's not random, but a little bit random.
Yeah.
We really don't know today what's going to help us tomorrow.
Yeah.
So knowledge in any form is good. Technical development in any form is good. All kind of knowledge can be misused. I mean,
yes, exactly.
Physics, you can make a nuclear weapon, but it can also be used as an energy source.
Yeah.
So,
I want to go into one maybe from a completely different angle, a last topic before we start doing the rounding off questions. And I just want to take the opportunity. So here we sit with Vironova, a scale-up company that is truly core business, part of the intersectional innovation between data, AI, software, and the medical domain. And one of the things I think is important is, how do we get the mid-size companies of Sweden part of the data and AI software journey?
Yeah.
We have the tech giants over here, and we see the industry giants in Europe. They're trying to get their stuff done, and I'm talking Scania, Vattenfall, and all that. How should a mid-size company think about all this? Should they sort of sit on the sidelines? Should they get in on the game? What is your tip and advice? You are living the dream, in my opinion, of the future scale-up. But what about the mid-sized companies who has still, they're part of a core domain, they're hardworking?
Yeah.
What should they do? Well, how should they think?
So first, it's all about entrepreneurship. So if you have a company and you start a company, you must have a really, really strong driving force behind it, who's it's like Rocky Balboa. It's about how many hard hits you can take, not how many you can give, because it's a challenge, especially to commercializing something, finding a business model, and the problem is usually raising funds. So this question about having Swedish unicorns or big tech companies in Europe is, one thing is about funding, and funding is not as good in Sweden when it comes to the bigger amounts of money as in, for example, in the US. Right. But when it comes to funding for startups, we're world leading, for sure. And there's a lot of soft money, as we said, like grants to test things out, make a prototype. What we're bad at is the scale up.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. So scale up can be either money, like investments. And I think, unfortunately, in Sweden, we go to the stock exchange a little bit too early with small and medium-sized companies, and that kills many of them. They become like dead fish there, because there's no liquidity, they don't raise more capital, and they have to work with investor relations rather than with sales and marketing and product development.
Core product development.
Yeah. I think one way we've used it is partnership. So we're a small company in Sweden, and our main markets, it's Europe, US, but when one of our customers was acquired by a Japanese company, Takeda, then we partnered with Hitachi, and it's the third biggest market for us is Japan. It's a challenge as a small Swedish companies to conquer Japan. The song.
But maybe Hitachi is a good idea.
The song not lost in Japan, but something. Yeah.
Yes.
So to partnership.
I know Alphaville, big in Japan.
Yeah, big in Japan. Yeah. We thank you. I think it's the rum or the beer.
Something for the
we're gonna start. Yeah, we're gonna start speaking Japanese soon. But I think partnership is one model.
Yeah. Collaboration partnership.
Yeah, collaboration, because I think business is also all about sharing. Like we said, recruiting people is about sharing success. When it comes to business, it's about sharing revenues with your shareholders or your partners. It's much easier to do business together. A win-win is better than lose-lose. And it's the same. If you're a small Swedish company and you want to enter and become big in Japan, partnership is a good thing. Either an investor or a company, etc., etc. I think one big benefit with Sweden is all the big companies with a lot of senior management that have experience, they work internationally. They are the best investors in Sweden, actually, besides the entrepreneurs that have the cash.
So go
knowledge.
close to one of the big Swedish giants.
Partnership with the Swedish big companies, and Swedish big companies want to partner with small Swedish companies, but that's like working interdisciplinary. It's not the same language,
No.
like science and business. Big company, processes, corporates, routines.
Corporate versus,
SMEs, that's more innovation, flexible. It's not the same thing. We're fast, they're slow.
And they want to be fast. So in a way, they dream about this, and you dream about that. So
They have the resources, they have the money.
It should be a good
senior management. It's a great fit.
But what is the problem? The problem is the lingo and it's, in this partnership. Why doesn't it happen more?
It's all about entrepreneurship, grit and stamina. If you want to do something, it's what do you usually say? It's all in the execution, Mats.
No, it's all in this. You know this.
The doer.
No, but you know this, Henrik. It's the strategy to execution gap.
Yeah.
Thank you. How do we diminish that gap?
Yeah.
And then it's about endurance.
Let's go from slideware to hardware. Yeah. PowerPoint to execution.
No, but exactly, execution is strategy, and vice versa. No one of those
management consultants.
But they coexist, and no one goes before the other one. They are equally important. That's one thing. And then I would say also, we on a greater level in Sweden, if we want to talk Sweden, that if we don't have the endurance to let some of these companies in the scale-up mode to have the endurance, and they go under the quarterly economy, where they need to show up with red or black
figures every month.
With expectation management.
What's the quote here? It's 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have the stamina.
Yeah. No, but
It's hard work.
It is hard work.
It's not, there is no overnight success. Back to Ingmar Stenmark. The more I train, the more lucky I get.
And you look at some of these unicorns and they got so big in 1 year. No, they were hard work in 15 years, and then they got the money, and you saw.
Or they have a good
news.
backup from
That's
beginning. Like
notice.
if you have a very strong VC or PE behind you, it goes a little bit faster because they know.
But then we can get into the new topic. We shouldn't start it. Bootstrapping versus VC. Because is it really healthy all the time to take VC too early?
It really depends on what you're working with. A VC wants, they are more, there's no venture capital, risk capital. It's there's just money. There's no risk in it. The lower the risk, the more capital you get. It's like the bank. If you have money, you can loan from the bank. If you don't have money, don't even go to the bank. So venture capital is, if you have a simple business model and you can define your market and your customer and your business model, and you want to scale up, go for private equity or VC. I think what's encouraged nowadays is entrepreneurship, and I like that. And we should encourage it, especially in Sweden, because we have this social security system that we're safe anyhow. And education is free. So we can try a little bit more.
We should use our system more for entrepreneurship.
Yes, definitely. And we have a few role models that, even from before, like IKEA and things like that, big companies made by like one person in their lifetime. It's huge. I mean, what Ingmar Kamprad did, that's amazing. Amazing. And now we have, especially when it's software, in like Spotify or Minecraft, just a computer game.
Klarna,
so many,
accept.
Vironova, just fantastic. But it's
iSettle, like the list.
There are so many, and I think the good thing is they're giving back to entrepreneurship, because they are some really, really good investors. Yes, in the Swedish startup ecosystem.
is a good example.
Yeah, selling it twice or 3 times. That's a good businessman. Yeah. No, he's very nice.
Wow, this is cool. We're running out of time.
We just started.
But I think it's the after work that we really need to come up now.
We're just turning off the camera. We're continuing.
The 2 hours is
start
up.
playing Big in Japan now. So.
we're gonna put on Big in Japan, and we're gonna hear Mats. You had a plectrum. Mats asked whose guitar is this? It's your, Goran. But Mats, let's get into the guitars and the keyboard.
Desperado.
But before we do that, we have a couple of very simple questions that we always want to finish off with. So what's next for you guys, privately and Vironova? What's next? What's happening now?
I don't have a private life, but thank you for the question. No, we're in the scale-up phase, and that I think that's fun. Every stage in the life or the different maturity stages of a company is really, really fascinating. And being a teenager, that's problematic. Growing up is also really fascinating because now we have this problem about conquering the world, scaling up, going out internationally. You always learn something new for every step you take. This is good with entrepreneurship.
Cool.
So now we're in this scale-up phase, and I think that's...
So is that going more markets or deeper in a couple of markets? Or
I didn't want to say it, but it's about, now it's making money.
I would say scale-up is scaling up and also scaling down on different initiatives.
Yeah.
Core focus. Exactly. To talk that business lingo. But that's one of the things. And then it's the balancing between bootstrapping and finding new capital.
Staying
and making
childish while growing up.
Cool.
Keep the scientific spirit when introducing the processes and routines.
And go back to this. Never lose this.
No.
What's the fundament? Okay, we have the technology, we have the data and so forth, but without the heart and team and so forth,
passion.
We can trash it.
Yeah.
Family. I mean, we're working in medicine, but it's quite easy. It's just about sleep, exercise, diet, and if you add some friendship and love in it, you don't need any medicines. So it's just to try to simplify your life and enjoy what you're doing. If you work with your passion, that's the best thing in life. So
it's another T-shirt, I think. Here.
Yeah, work with your passion.
Yeah.
Which one?
That's
and last question. Who should we have on the podcast next? Do you have any recommendations? You highlighted maybe some of your superstars.
I think I could come up with 3 or 4 people you should have here. So
do some name dropping.
But deep diving in
how many can you fit on this side of the table? But 2 or 3, I would say. So Gustav, head of R&D, he knows artificial intelligence. Martin, Martin is doing a PhD in artificial intelligence. Ida Maria, soon to be professor in image analysis. That's 3.
Yeah, I would say Saba Hussein Gore, to get the application specialist theme of it.
So basically, you're only pitching Vironova people right now.
No. I'm just pitching geniuses who are knowledgeable about what you do.
Okay.
Because I think we missed something. We didn't dig deep into the computer science and artificial intelligence, more about the application. But if you want to dig deep into, they can talk
that could be fun. Because we want the balance between the business, the regulatory, and the real hardcore AI nerdy stuff.
Yeah,
so
because both are necessary.
Both are necessary.
Basic research and applications.
All right. I think that's a wrap. And thank you for an awesome conversation. And now we continue off camera.
Thank you for your hospitality. It was great being here.
This was very
awesome. Very
cheers to Goran. Goran.
It's Goran.
Thank you for facilitating.
Great.
Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.